All right, so I think we're just about ready to get started. We've got a really good session for you guys today. I want to thank you all for joining us for Balancing the Mind and Machine, the Tao of Cleaning Your Harvesting Equipment. This is going to be really helpful for you. And just a couple of things before we get started. We're going to be sending the recording out afterwards. Don't worry if you missed something or if you want to watch something again. We'll be sending that out shortly, probably the very next day. We're also going to be doing lots of Q&A. So we're going to answer some questions here and there after each segment and have a longer Q&A towards the end. But you can hit the Q&A button anytime you want. Type in your question. We'll either answer it live or type the answer right there in the chat window. So might be wondering why are we doing this on cleaning? Well, this is consistently one of our most requested topics, both on the blogs, for webinar topics, even questions sent over via email. So keep in mind, we're hearing your requests, and keep those requests coming for other webinar topics as well. Now, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share, and I'm going to pass it over to Brett and AJ at Mobius HQ in Vancouver. Take it away, guys.
Right on. Thanks, Jonathan. Howdy, guys. I'm Brett, along with AJ. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be breaking this down into 4 main sections. So the first section is setting up your wash bay, the actual physical room itself. Section number 2 will be equipping your wash bay. Section number 3 will be developing your cleaning SOPs. And section number 4 will be preventative maintenance. So as Jonathan touched on there real quick, we are going to be sending out the links to everything, so you don't have to worry about jotting them down, etc. It'll all be available for your reference at a later date. And secondarily to that, once we're done covering these 4 topics, which are kind of generic in there because we love everybody out there, not just Mobius customers. Subsequent to those 4 topics and their Q&A, we'll switch to some more Mobius specific stuff for those of you that want to hang around. So with that being said, let's hand her over to AJ for section 1 on setting up a wash bay.
Thanks very much, Brett. So some of you out there may be in the planning phase for a brand new build out. You may be looking to expand your wash bay or doing the initial allocation or renovating. So if you take a look at this list here of tips of things to consider when you are designating and setting up that wash bay, it will help out a lot. So the first thing to consider is the amount of equipment that needs to be washed and the frequency that you are going to be washing each piece of equipment. So if you're talking about processing equipment, that might get used every single day and needs to be cleaned every single day. Whereas if you're talking about some of the trays that are coming out of the drying room, that might be on a 7 to 10 day rotation. So think about how frequently you're going to be doing that and the amount of space then that's required to rotate in and out of your wash bay. We then want to think about the size of the equipment when it's broken down for cleaning. So does it come in just a single piece and it gets washed that way, or does it get broken down into multiple pieces? So when you put these first 2 points together, the amount of equipment to be washed and the size when it's broken down, that will give you a really good indication of the amount of space that you need to allocate for your wash bay. Next, we want to think about having washing areas versus drying areas. If you have the luxury of space, you might be able to do these separately, but you definitely want to take into consideration that once the equipment is washed and you've rinsed it off, it needs to be able to have somewhere to dry. So if that means that a piece of equipment that breaks down into multiple components needs to be left in those multiple components to dry before it can be put back together, that's going to take up some space in your wash bay before anything else can go in there and through that process. So consider that when you're allocating the space. Next thing we want to look for is ensuring that there is access to hot water in the room. So everybody on this call today is dealing with either cannabis or hemp or both, and this is a really sticky resinous substance. And hot water is the key to your cleaning routines. If you've ever tried to clean cannabis resin off a piece of equipment using cold water, it's not a very fun exercise. So make sure that you've got hot water piped into wherever you're doing your washing. You're going to want to include proper drainage in your room. So a lot of times rooms might be equipped with just a single round floor drain in the middle. But if you can, it's great if you can have some kind of trench drainage system built in, something like that. And it just means that all the soils that come off, they're easier to get rid of rather than having it go down that single round drain in there. But either way, you need to have some kind of drainage in the room. It's not absolutely necessary, but a lot of wash bays we're building in sinks and countertops and other built-in fixtures. So if you are considering including these in your room, think about the size of the equipment and the parts that you are going to be cleaning in those sinks, and ensure that your sink is large enough to handle that. So one thing that I've noticed in a lot of facilities is they'll have two beautiful side-by-side sinks that are mostly designed for the food industry, and it's great for cleaning pots and pans. But a lot of equipment in this industry is a little bit bigger than that, and when there's a divider between two sinks, it prevents either sink from being useful at all. So think about that. Think about how deep and how wide you need your countertops to be to actually accommodate the equipment so that it's useful to you. If you can't source something like that, you're almost better off ignoring having the built-in fixtures and instead having movable tables and things like that. And Brett's going to be covering that in another section here. When the room is getting designed, make sure that you're taking into consideration proper air handling. So any wash bay inevitably is going to be a very humid environment, and you're going to be having different cleaning chemicals and sanitizers in that space. So making sure that the room has proper air handling, both to remove the moisture so that your equipment can dry and expel the cleaning of fumes and sanitizing fumes is really important. We actually had an end user who was using so much isopropyl alcohol at one point without proper air handling in their wash bay that a number of their employees ended up going home sick with alcohol poisoning. So we definitely want to avoid that situation. Think about the type of floor finish. For those facilities that have an indoor wash bay, you're going to want to have something that is a nice even surface, that it is appropriate for placing equipment on for anything that is not going onto a tabletop. Something that's easy to clean, so a lot of wash bays are set up with epoxy floors. But I also know there are probably a lot of people on the webinar today who are maybe operating out of a farm environment where you're going to be washing outside, and that's great. You have all the drainage in the world, you can spray everywhere. But if you don't have a proper concrete pad or anything like that to wash on, that turns into a little bit of a nightmare. So if you're planning this out or need to do a reno, put in a concrete pad or some other type of smooth surface so that you can roll your equipment and your cleaning tools out onto that pad. And you make sure that you're not actually trying to clean your equipment on a dirty surface that's just splashing the soil back up onto your equipment and negating all of your hard work. And then the last point to consider here would be the distance between the area that your equipment is used in and where your wash bay is located. So it's obviously not the ideal situation if you have your processing room at one end of the facility where you dirty your equipment, and then your wash bay at the extreme opposite end of the facility, and you have to roll all that dirty equipment all the way through the hallways of the facility. So as much as possible, try and have them adjacent to one another, or at least in somewhat close proximity. We're going to pause there for some questions on this section here.
Yep, sure. I got a couple here for you guys. The first one was a little generic in that they were wondering, how do you determine the size of your wash bay or your sanitation room? If you have, the luxury of having a completely separate room, how do you figure out how much space you should allocate that when, as in most facilities, space is kind of at a premium?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to those first 2 points there where you consider, how many pieces of equipment might be in there at any given time. So for example, a worst case scenario might be you have 3 pieces of equipment that need to be washed daily, and then you have 2 other pieces of equipment that get washed every 3 weeks. But there's going to be 1 day every 3 weeks where everything is in that wash bay. So if you can take a look at the footprint of all those pieces of equipment and consider if any of it gets broken down, are you putting those on tabletops? So how large, what's the footprint of the tabletops that you're putting on? And you can map that out. That will give you a sense. Make sure that you're allowing for enough circulation space around there and your washing tools and things like that. So a lot of these things, the Mobius equipment, we have CAD files for all of our equipment. So you can actually take those, drop them into your drawings so you can plan out what your room would look like. But if you can just calculate basically on what your footprint is going to be for each thing that would be in there, that's a really good place to start from.
Sure, and I guess to take it
and then add 10% because you're never going to go, oh man, do we have too much
That is
space?
true. I say this at every place I go to. I have never ever been into a facility yet that had not undersized their wash bay by at least 100%. Everybody could use double or more the size of their wash bay.
And I guess you could always tape it out. Would that help?
Yeah, absolutely. If cleaning becomes a bottleneck, there's no amount of grow rooms that you can allocate, nothing you can do that will make up for the bottleneck that you end up creating for yourself by not having your other harvesting or processing equipment available for you, because you can't do anything with your plants then. So don't create that bottleneck for yourself if you can.
Great. And the second question was on temperature. So do you have any like temperature you're trying to get to or anything that's a little bit more specific when you're referring to hot water?
Can I steal your thunder?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to touch on that in the next segment, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. So it's a good question. Most commercial dishwashers and that they're going to be operating at a high temperature of about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, 65 degrees Celsius, which is about 150 Fahrenheit. So somewhere between 50 or 55 Celsius and 65 Celsius or 130 to 150 Fahrenheit is about appropriate. Most cleaning solutions are activated at their peak efficacy in that range. And it's also likely not going to damage any of your equipment materials at those temperatures. You start getting much higher than that and you begin to have an impact on plastics, rubbers, adhesives, things like that, and the impact of your cleaner begins to go down.
Perfect. Okay, thanks very much, guys. I think we're good to move on.
All righty, guys. Part 2 will be equipping your wash bay. So now that you've got the actual physical room, along with its infrastructure, plumbing, etc., now it's time to put some items into that room. So first thing we're going to talk about is tables, racks, flat surfaces. Basically, you're going to need some horizontal surfaces that are big enough to house the components that you're breaking down. We like stainless steel tables or the wire stainless racks that you can get at Uline. Always a good idea to include casters. So that just allows you to move things around a little bit easier. Say you take one rolling rack up beside your machine, take out a certain set of components, then you can wheel it away and roll up the next table, etc. Having extra mobility is never a hindrance. Second point I was going to touch on again was the hot water. In this case, we're going to refer to a hot water pressure washer. So a hot water pressure washer is a game changer. We've got in our demo trailer, we've got hot water on demand equipped in there. Yeah, it'll cost you a couple $1,000 to set it up. But again, you want to think about the business case for investing a couple of grand on something that might save you manifold that amount in labor down the way. So you can get a hot water on demand system if you're not into a plumbed in situation, or plumb in your hot water pressure washer. Heck of a great tool, heck of a great investment. Next on the list of equipment is going to be a low pressure garden sprayer. So all kinds of your grow shops may be selling these already. You can get them, any garden center, any home center, Lowe's, Home Depot, etc. It's a great way to mix and proportionalize and store your various chemicals and cleaners, and a fantastic way to apply them to your dirty objects. So that wand in there will be able to reach into some nooks and crannies. You'll have your ratio predetermined and premixed in there. Just make sure you're labeling the pressure, the low pressure sprayer with the contents of it so you don't mix up chemicals. Compressed air is one that we see overlooked all the time. So compressed air is handy for a few different things, but in talking about in the wash bay here, it's handy to do a couple of things. First off, particularly with dry trimming, you're going to create a lot of keef dust, and a lot of dust is going to settle on your equipment. So rather than turn that dust into a slurry with your degreaser and whatnot, blow a bunch of it away before you get to the application of your degreaser and your cleanser. So it's super handy for that. It's also good to have on hand to assist in drying off your equipment. So you might want to use towels or rags for that, but compressed air will certainly help in that regard. Next, we'll talk about drying racks. So in the case of allowing your equipment to dry in a less humid environment than the wash bay, you're going to want some racks that are going to house your components safely, so they can't be knocked over, dropped on the ground, etc., and breaking or damaging some valuable components. So take a good look at what your requirements might be to house your components while drying. In a smaller operation, you're probably not going to look at specialized parts washers. You know, if you're trimming once every 3 months, probably not a real good investment to invest a few $1,000s into something. But if you're a bigger operation running, 2-3 tandem lines, 16 hours a day, something like our tumbler and brush washer is a real no-brainer. A lot of times people like to customize items from the commercial kitchen industry, plate washers, cutlery and flatware washers, etc., with their own custom racking to wash their materials. So again, it's a business calculation that you're going to want to make. If you're spending X on labor a year doing a certain function and you can spend a fraction of that on a machine to take care of it, then that starts to make some real good business sense. And finally, we'll talk about some hand tools that you're going to want to have at hand. So real basic stuff. First off, rags, cloths, towels. You're going to want those both for scrubbing and for drying. So have a selection there, stuff that you can dispose of, stuff that you can get chemicals on. You're going to want to, in a lot of cases, keep your degreaser rags separate from, say, your ISO wipes or that kind of thing. So it's not a bad idea to go with color-coded. Your orange ones are all degreaser, your white ones are all ISO, etc. Disposable pre-soaked wipes. So these are things that you can get from your chemical suppliers like Diversey or Zep or whomsoever else. They look like a sort of a scaled down ice cream bucket, and they got like your Lysol white type roll of wipes inside, but it's nice, it's completely dry. So you add in whatever your ratio of your cleanser is into that pail, and now you've got pre-soaked wipes with the ratio of your SOP approved cleansers at hand. Again, make sure that you're labeling these containers. It's an absolute must. It's a liability issue, a worker safety issue, and it can just save frustration if you're, again, trying to clean with ISO when ISO is not a cleaner. Yeah, the pre-soaked wipes are great to have. Scrub brushes. Sometimes even after some saturation time and surface contact time with your degreaser, you got some heavy built up soil that's going to require a little bit more elbow grease. So not a bad idea to hit up the dollar store, pick up a selection of scrub brushes. You might want a brush with a 6-inch handle on it to reach in somewhere, or you might want like a nail scrubbing brush, or maybe even a toothbrush, or that kind of thing. But they're dirt cheap and super handy tools to have. So kit out your wash bay with an assortment of various style scrub brushes. Plastic scrapers, again, for some of that heavier soil. We really like the Scrape Right brand scrapers. They come in different colors, and the different colors denote their rigidity, their density, or their hardness. So the black ones are their Cadillac ones. We really like to go with the black ones. I know quite often they're sold out, so we'll refer to their yellow ones, which work a treat as well. But they just look like a little razor blade, and you fix them into a little handle, basically, for your horizontal scraping. They work fantastic. And then finally, so far as hand tools go, again, on the vein of keeping your chemicals at hand, pre-ratioed and labeled. a selection of spray bottles. You might want, one with a degreaser, one with your ISO, maybe even one with water in it, etc. But keep your spray bottles at hand, and again, make sure that you're clearly labeling them for worker safety and just effectiveness as well. So that's those are sort of our basics. As you guys write in the coming days, if you guys have any other little tips, tricks, tools that you find particularly handy, we're all in this to learn daily. So please share your tips, and we'll pass them on and disseminate them in future blogs, etc. So that said, Jonathan, I think we're ready to handle a couple of questions on that topic.
Sure. Yeah, I got a good one from Jessica, and I'm not going to try her last name because I'd butcher it, but she had a good question that, AJ, you might be able to answer. She was asking about a recommendation for using ultrasonic cleaners. Is that something we use for Mobius parts?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Jessica. I don't have a firm answer on it. I do know of a few places that were looking at using it. I mean, it's amazing for cleaning lab equipment. I just don't know how effective it is for cleaning off cannabis resin. So if anybody out there's a few Canadian LPs I know who have invested in this. If you can sort of give some feedback on that. I know it's great in normal circumstances if you were using it, like I say, in that pharmaceutical lab type environment. I just don't know how well it performs on that sort of sticky, resinous, almost sap type soil that is cannabis resin. I tried it on a small scale once. It wasn't great, but it wasn't the appropriate sized ultrasonic tank.
Yeah, if I can just touch on that real quick. That was one of the ideas I had actually early on, because I'm 112 years old. And so when I took drafting in high school, we actually used pens, and we used an ultrasonic cleaner to free up the hardened ink so that they were still usable. So that was an idea that sprung to mind immediately for me when I realized the issues that we face in this business. So I really looked forward to an ultrasonic solution to see how that goes. I don't want to sling mud and call out names or anything, but the feedback I've heard, because it has been a particular topic of interest for me, so I've asked specifically some users of that equipment, and I'm not hearing the results that would make me want to invent my own ultrasonic cleaner, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that would be my feeling as well, because I feel like if it worked beautifully, we would have heard rave reviews about it by now. But if anybody has comments, please share it in the chat section here.
We had a what is your favorite source? So all these kind of these non-specific items, the razor blades and the sprayers, those kind of things. What's your favorite source for those kind of things? Where can people get all these?
Well, I mean, they're varied. Sometimes you just that's the beauty of the Google world these days. You can just Google it and you've got a billion different options at your fingertips. It might be the old, Amazon.com solution. I know yesterday AJ corrected me, the tub of pre-soakable wipes I thought came from Uline. They don't. They come from the chemical suppliers. So if you are a Diversey user, you can buy it from them. If you are a ZEP user, you can buy it from them, etc. But ScrapeRite is right through them. Their website, scraperite.com, I think it is off the top of my head.
Well, also on our cleaning tools section of our website, we actually provide a link to each one of the specific items that we have there. So you'll notice, I would say that the number one thing that's on there is Uline, and that's because Uline can provide all of the racks and carts and trolleys and things like that. You can get the low pressure sprayer from them. I think they sell pressure washers. So a lot of it can come from Uline. But when it comes to some of the chemicals and things like that, it's you got to get a little bit more specialized. So please refer to our website for a link to those kind of tools.
Cool. And actually two tips here that I think that are coming from the audience that are worth sharing. Pete from Verano is on. And
Hey, Pete.
Yeah, he's mentioning that they use an auto parts washer with built-in filtration, and that's been working really great for them. Of course, using a cannabis resin cleaner or proper pH degreaser in conjunction with that. So thanks very much for that, Pete. And then Christina mentioned that they use non-scratch scouring pads.
Yeah.
And they like those a lot to help preserve the finishes and the special coatings on the equipment.
Good call, Christina.
Right on.
Yeah.
And we have just one more question, kind of going back to Well, it's partly been answered, but I think we can address it again. Going back to the temperature, there was just a question from Jeffrey. He was wondering if there should be any concern on the lifespan of the tumbler components, the plastics, the adhesives, if hot water is being used constantly to clean that.
Yeah, so I did catch a little bit of the chat there that was on the screen as Brett was going through his section there. So I just want to clarify what everybody heard, because sometimes it can sound the same. So it's between 130 degrees, 130 Fahrenheit, and 150 Fahrenheit. I would say you're going to max out in that range. The components are going to be okay at those temperatures. So if you had the tumbler that was soaking in hot water for 15 minutes before you washed it down, first of all, the water isn't going to remain at that temperature the entire time, but you'd be fine on doing that on a daily basis on your tumbler. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I saw one other person ask there about steam cleaning. I would just be really careful about steam cleaning, because again, if you're aiming that right at some components where, like I say, rubbers, adhesives, plastics that are subject to melting at those kind of temperatures, you're going to want to be really careful about aiming the steam directly at those. So it's a bit like pressure washing. If you have electronic components, you want to avoid pressure washing that. You're going to want to think that way about steam cleaning too on things.
Cool. Okay. Thanks very much, guys. We can keep it going.
So the next section that we're going to go into is around developing your cleaning SOPs, or standard operating procedures here. And the first thing we want to do off the top of this section is to dispel a myth. And that myth is that ISO is a cleaner. ISO is not a cleaner. ISO can be used to sanitize things, and it can be used as a disinfectant, but it is definitely not a cleaner. So what exactly does that mean? How do we define cleaners and sanitizers and that? So cleaning is defined as the removal of dirt or debris by physical and or chemical means. So that's actually lifting the soil. Generally, you're going to be able to see that soil with your eyes, and it's penetrating that soil and lifting it up from the surface of a piece of equipment or floor or something like that. Sanitizing, on the other hand, it's not talking about the soils. It's actually talking about reducing the microorganisms that are on a surface. So sanitizing, you'll notice here in this definition, this comes from the Government of Canada. Sanitizing takes place after the cleaning step because it's most effective on a minimally soiled surface. So if you are trying to sanitize a surface that still has a soil on it, you might be attacking whatever's on the surface of that cannabis resin that's left on there, but there are microorganisms that are still underneath and within that resin smear that's still on the equipment. So you're not really achieving what you set out to do there. So the soil has to be removed first via cleaning and then move on to sanitizing. And we'll just briefly touch on disinfecting here. So disinfecting is actually applying a disinfectant to completely destroy whatever microorganism is on that surface. Disinfecting is not something that generally needs to be carried out in the cannabis and hemp industries. Generally, what we're talking about in our industry is cleaning and sanitizing. You can take a look and see if you have any very specific needs for disinfecting, but generally when you're moving from sanitizing to disinfecting, it might be a different chemical that you're using, but most of the time it's about contact time. So sanitizing might take place with a 30-second contact time, whereas disinfecting might be 2 minutes. And I throw those numbers out there. It would completely depend on the situation and the cleaner that you're looking to use. Okay, so now that we've defined exactly what cleaning and sanitizing are and what the difference between those two things is, let's talk a little bit about how we figure out if our equipment is clean. And this is a process that's called cleaning validation. And this is a scientific process that is defined, and there's lots of guidance that's out there. So you might be at the very front end of setting up your operation right now and developing your SOPs for the very first time, or you might be wanting to do a refresh, an update of what you're doing here, streamlining things. So a big part of this is going to be making sure that whatever you put in place for your cleaning program, that's actually achieving the results that, that you've set out for yourself. So I recommend going to one of these links here, or I didn't include a European link on here, but there's lots of guidelines out there. The first one there are Health Canada's cleaning validation guidelines. The second one there is from the FDA. I recognize that in the US, you're subject to state regulations. The only reason I put the FDA cleaning validation guidelines on here is because they're just that. They are guidelines that can be used in food industry, pharmaceutical industry, the cannabis industry, to help you understand how to set up your cleaning program and make sure that it's actually working. So for equipment cleaning, the validation program is all about ensuring that the proposed cleaning regimen does not introduce contaminants into whatever your end product is, or the ingredients that are going into that end product. So keep that in mind, because if you're thinking about the validation for cleaning your floors or your walls, that is different than something that is directly plant touching. So make sure that you're considering a separation of those two, and you need to approach each one of those a little bit differently. And the cleaning validation guidelines will help with that. There's a difference between facility and processing equipment. The last little note that's on here, and I'm going to touch on this again after this, is part of your cleaning validation might come via swab testing. So I'm aware of some producers out there who have handheld swab testing devices. They might use those on a daily basis to ensure that their equipment is cleaned and sanitized before it goes into operation. Some places use it either weekly or monthly, just as a random validation to make sure that their clean procedures are in place. But you'll see a link there that you can access after this to check out some of the options available on the marketplace right now for swab testing tools. Okay, so we go to develop a cleaning SOP. What do we need to include in that cleaning SOP? So there's quite a list in here. You want to make sure that you've got your pre-rinse instructions, and Brett kind of touched on this when he talked about compressed air. So if you're dry trimming, it's going to be a lot easier and faster for you if you give everything a little bit of a blowdown before you begin to apply liquids or any other or anything else to it, just to get rid of that so you don't get the slurry, like
the old mechanic shower.
Exactly. Want to take a look at, you want to include in your cleaning SOP the chemicals that you're going to be using and the rotation. So what order are you using them in? Want to take a look at the ratios that they're mixed into and the handling instructions. Some chemicals, and I actually think about our the tumbler and brush washer, you're going to want to generally have the water in place first and add the cleaner afterwards. Otherwise, you end up making a giant bubble bath and you get a lot of foaming action. So that's also part of your handling instructions. You're going to want to follow the chemical concentrations that are recommended on the product label. Now, I say that with a little bit of caution, because the cannabis and hemp industry does not have a lot of substances yet that have been developed specifically for it. So you may require a higher concentration of something to deal with the resin than what is on the product label. So what you can do in those cases is, first of all, make sure you're using safe handling procedures, the proper PPE and everything else, and then maybe do some spot testing on smaller areas to determine if you have an appropriate concentration level that you're using. Your SOP should address the temperature of the water or your cleaning solutions. Next couple of points around solution pressures and contact time. So the pressure, we talked about the low pressure sprayers. We talked about the hot water pressure washers. So how can it take it, and how long is that cleaner going to sit on the surface if you're applying it that way? There are some devices that are actually foamers. So they will spray out a foam, and the whole idea of using a foam when you're cleaning is that it actually sits on a surface versus if you just had it in plain liquid format and it drips right off. So if you've got a foam that's applied to the surface and it can sit there, you're increasing that contact time, or the ability for contact time to be there for your cleaner to penetrate and lift off a soil. Your SOPs should address scrubbing, rinsing, and drying instructions. So how you're physically going to be lifting up some of those soils, making sure everything gets fully rinsed off so that you're not carrying through any residual soil or cleaning products into the end. And the drying instructions, is it just air dry? Is it getting a boost by having a bit of a hand dry first before it's left out to fully air dry at the end? And your compressed air can help out with that. Your final flush and rinsing requirements. If you, for example, if you happen to be on a farm where your water source that you're using in your wash bay is in part a non-potable water source, you will want to have a potable water source to rinse off the components that are going to be plant touching and having anything that is going to be a consumable. So just sort of consider your water sources there and how you're going to rinse. And then finally, your SOP may involve some kind of swab testing or other regular cleaning validation protocol that's in there after you've done your initial validation. Maybe you're checking in on it every 2 weeks or every month, something like that, to make sure that everything is continues to run on track. Okay, so I think this might be the part that everybody is waiting for here. So how do I select a cleaner? So what cleaning and sanitizing products should I use? So the first one there, we really want to ensure that we're selecting a cleaner that is appropriate both for the soil that we're trying to remove and for the material it is going to be applied to. So those of you on the webinar today who are Mobius users, you'll know that there are a couple of restrictions there because we've got some parts on the trimmer that we don't want to use a high pH cleaner on. So, you know, that needs to be taken into account when you are selecting a cleaner and developing your SOPs. You might find a cleaner that, you know, it's not friendly on stainless when it's left on there for long periods of time. So we're going to want to take a look at what the material is and what your contact time is going to be for that cleaner to do its job. So make sure that you're considering that as you're cleaning it. And now I know that Brett did a little bit of the writing of stuff beforehand. I think you asked us a trick question.
Yeah, in a recent blog that we were promoting this webinar, I posited the question, what is a better cleaner, 70% or 90% ISO? And then in brackets, I put, this is a trick question. So AJ.
So Brett, this was a double-barreled trick question because one, as we now have learned, ISO is not a cleaner.
Heck no.
But if we are using ISO as a sanitizer, or, you know, if you are using it to lift something up, you want to think about the properties of it. So ISO, it's isopropyl alcohol. So it is going to evaporate. So people think that more is better. My university chemistry teacher always thought that more was better, and it led to him blowing the ceiling tiles out of our lecture hall because he would always be adding more in there. In this case, it's quite the opposite. So 99% ISO is usually meant for doing some cleanup on electronics because it evaporates very quickly. So the alcohol is hitting it, it's attacking whatever the microbes are there, and it's going to evaporate. Where 70% ISO obviously has a higher a non-evaporative content, so it will actually be able to sit on the surface longer and kill those microbes. And then you go down the scale, and 30% ISO, you are still going to be able to kill those microbes, but you're going to have even longer contact time. So what I would recommend in this industry is there is no need, absolutely no need, to use any higher concentration than 30% ISO. It is going to be a lot less expensive, And again, I would strongly recommend only using ISO as a sanitizer and using a proper degreaser as your cleaner. That is going to be much more effective at removing the soils. It's going to be much less expensive, and it is going to be much easier on your equipment. And reserve your 30% ISO purely for sanitizing. Okay, so now we're getting to a part here that some of you may have experienced. I don't know how many QC people we have on the call today. I hope there are some. I know that this is a bit of an ongoing battle between a lot of production teams and QC teams. You know, I get this all the time. My QC team says that I can only use certified cleaners. So this is definitely something that is misunderstood. So when it comes to cannabis and hemp regulations in all jurisdictions, there is really no such thing as a certified cleaner. None of these regulations require or prescribe a particular cleaner or type of cleaner that can be used. All of these regulations simply state that the, and I'm going to pick on equipment here because that's what we're in the business of, but the equipment has to be cleaned so that it is not introducing a contaminant to the end product. There is nowhere in the regulations where it specifically states you can only use certified cleaners and here is the list of certified cleaners. There is no such thing. So what I've done here is I've pulled excerpts from a couple of the regulations just to point this out. And this can be some of your ammo that you use in having this conversation with your QC team. So the first one I pulled out was from the cannabis regulations here in Canada. We can go to the next slide here. You can see here, we don't need to read the whole thing. It's here for your reference after the fact, but these are the two sections of the regulations that are specifically addressing sanitation program and cleaning of equipment. And what you'll notice in there is that there's absolutely nothing on this in this regulation that talks about specific and approved cleaners that can be used. The next one that I pulled here is from the EU GMP guidelines. So some of you in Canada are producing your products for European consumption, and it is subject to GMP under European guidelines. I might have some people on the call here from Europe. And again, what you're going to notice here is that the GMP guidelines from Europe do not list any specific cleaners that need to be used. It simply states that the equipment needs to not be a source of contamination. So as long as you can illustrate and show through your cleaning validation that you are not introducing a contaminant to the next batch that's going to be processed using that equipment, you have met the letter absolutely of this regulation. And then finally, I just pulled something here from California. So in the US, all of your regulations are state driven. There's nothing federal yet. So I pulled from California as that's the largest jurisdiction right now. And again, you can see here when the regulations address equipment and utensils and the cleaning, sanitizing, and maintenance program, there's nothing in here that states specifically what you can use. So, you know, when you're developing the SOPs, you're talking to your colleagues in QA, ask them to point to a section in a regulation that is telling you that you need to use a particular substance, a particular cleaner, or that it has to be approved. Ask them to show you where in the regulation it states that, because we've spent a lot of time going through the regulations here, and this is how they're written. So essentially, the best thing that you can do is find a cleaner that is going to effectively remove the soil, allow you to properly sanitize after the fact, and then validate that your cleaning routine did its job. That's all that these regulations require of you.
Yeah, so I'll try not to get too animated on this because I get a little passionate and when it comes down to just, you know, straight up business. A lot of times we've been in facilities and they say, well, that cleaner isn't in our SOP, so we can't use it. And the implication there is they can't use it ever going forward. And to me, I just find that ludicrous. Who writes your SOPs? You do. So you can write it into your SOPs. So just think about it for a second logically. If the QA person responsible for writing the SOP takes, let's say, 10 hours to validate cleaner X, yet cleaner X is saving hundreds of hours in man hours, in scrubbing, et cetera, then as a straight up business decision, it behooves that QA person to spend that 10 hours and approve that cleaner to save the company hundreds of hours of labor costs, right? So
and chemical costs.
And chemical costs and all the rest of it. So my general message here is understand the implication of the law, and then get out of your own way.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you.
We'll move on to questions now, Jonathan.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. We do have a number of questions coming in, some of which we're responding to right in the chat. So if you don't hear us answering it live, that's where your answer will be. But we will probably need to get through these kind of quick because we got quite a few. First one was from Costa, and he was asking about scouring pads. So referencing the last section, he wanted to know if you had a brand that you can recommend that you feel is really unlikely to scratch or cause any wear.
So that was a recommendation that came from a participant here, a watcher of the webinar. So let's ask that individual who made that suggestion to email us in the brand, and we can disseminate that information out broadly and specifically to Costa.
Yeah, I think that might have been, oh, it's Christina. Thank you.
It is Scotch-Brite, okay.
Scotch-Brite.
And just know that Scotch-Brite has a number of different grades. It's kind of like sandpaper, so you're gonna wanna choose something that is non-abrasive. Christina, if you wanna come back with the color Scotch-Brite that you prefer, that's great.
And then if you over scour with whatever Scotch-Brite you use, sue Christina, not us.
Scott just mentioned he really liked that section, so not a question, but comment I thought you'd like to hear. And then Christina had asked a question right at the beginning there of the section. I think she's talking about ISO. She said IPA, but we're not talking about
isopropyl alcohol.
Okay,
yeah.
So she said she finds that it loosens and removes sticky cannabis residue and evaporates quickly, but hesitant to use degreasers as they don't know of any food grade products. Do you have suggestions there? Yeah,
so again, keep in mind, it doesn't need to be food grade so long as it's rinsable. So the product that we recommend the most as the degreaser is, there are two. So our high pH degreaser that we recommend is called Super Clean. And yeah, you're gonna find it at an automotive parts store. But the whole point is you use that to remove the soil, then you rinse. So there's nothing left. It doesn't matter if it's food grade or not. You're not drinking the cleaner. You're using the cleaner to get rid of the soil. So I'm using this to scoop it up from the surface. Then you rinse it away. If necessary, you sanitize after. But a lot of times you're not even going to need to do that. I mean, that's when the handheld swab tester comes in if you want to go that far with your cleaning routines. But the whole point of how these cleaners were designed, you need to find a cleaner that is rinsable. As long as the cleaner is rinsable and it is not leaving a residue after the fact, it's done its job. It doesn't matter that it's food grade. You do not go home and drink your bottle of cleaner that you wash your dishes with. So, it's all about proper rinsing techniques. The other one that we recommend, it's called Resonate Extra, and it was developed specifically for cannabis resin. Again, it's going to be effective, but you're not going to drink the bottle. So make sure you're rinsing.
Also, just a point of perspective, you say you use ISO and it lifts the soil, etc. That your perspective is comparing it to water. And yes, it will do a better job than just straight up water. But when you compare it to a degreaser, go try it out against Resonate Extra or Super Clean. You'd be like, "Ooh, now we're seeing that ISO actually, it's better than water, but not much."
Yeah, to be fair, not all degreasers are going to be formulated exactly perfect for cannabis resin. So that's why it is a little bit of sort of trial and error or using these ones that are formulated specifically.
And Peter also had another tip. He said in the US, he recommends going by the local health department guidelines for cleaning unless the state is the entity responsible for the inspection. So appreciate that. Thank you, Peter.
Good point.
And a question from somebody anonymous there was asking about Bio Green Clean, if you guys are familiar with that one or if you can recommend that one.
I'm not familiar with that product. There are just so many cleaning products out there. I mean, if you find that you have success with it and it meets your cleaning validation guidelines, go for it.
And let us know.
Yeah, please.
And Glenda was asking about, maybe this makes sense to you guys. She was asking about DIN numbers on cleaning solutions. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so what was the question about it?
Well, that's the whole question. What about DIN
Okay.
numbers on cleaning solutions?
Sure. So now, DIN numbers on cleaning, there are processes where you can, for example, get your cleaner certified organic, or it can be assigned a certain designation through the appropriate jurisdiction. So, you know, in Canada, that might be the Food Inspection Agency, and there would be a certain division of the FDA that would do something like this. And that's to make sure that you're not buying the cleaning equivalent of moonshine out of somebody's backyard. You know, this is a chemical that's been deemed safe to use. There's also like an NGO entity called, and it's NSF. So you'll often see that logo on cleaners. It's the National Sanitation Foundation, I believe is what it stands for. So these are all made so that, you know, does the cleaner do what it says it's going to do? Does it have the proper SDS? Is the formulation safe to use? You know, should it be out there in the marketplace? So those are all things that say you as a consumer, you want to buy that to, you know, clean your bathrooms, clean your cannabis processing equipment, clean your facility, whatever it is. What I'm trying to get people to is recognizing there is no list out there that is associated with your cannabis regulations. So go and find products that are safe to use, and there are literally thousands of them out there, and find out what is the most effective for removing the soil that we're talking about in this case.
Cool. And then Jesus was asking about tumbler washer. And is that something we're going to mention in the next section, or should we bring that up?
So at the end of today, we were keeping the conversation during the webinar pretty general, and we've got one more topic to go through, and then we've got some links at the end that go specifically into cleaning videos for the Mobius lineup of equipment. One of the videos that we're going to link to is the automatic tumbler and brush washer there. Cool.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll put a pin in the Q&A for now and pick it up after the next section then. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. Okay, guys, part 4 is preventative maintenance. So the best and most cost-effective way to manage your equipment is through preventative maintenance and a scheduled program. So you always want to follow your OEM, your manufacturer's scheduled protocol on preventative maintenance, and you make sure that you're performing it. It's going to cost you a whole lot less in preventative maintenance than it will in reactive maintenance. A big, huge part of preventative maintenance is regular and proper cleaning. This is huge. So a lot of times, I know for Mobius equipment specifically, we engineer and manufacture these machines to extreme tolerances, down to thousandths of an inch. So if you've got an eighth of an inch of resin built up on there, you're going to skew the way that machine performs for sure. It might cause overheating issues in various pieces of equipment, not necessarily cannabis related, but anything. When the equipment starts wearing a jacket of filth, it holds in heat, et cetera, et cetera. So it can cause a myriad different complications down the road. Plus you're investing some pretty, serious dollars here. Doesn't matter what equipment out there you're buying, you're spending thousands of dollars. So of course you want to keep that clean as a part of your regular preventative maintenance. Include your preventative maintenance procedures in your SOPs. So what you want to do there is make sure that everybody is aware in your team what needs to be done at what intervals, whether it's a 50-hour interval, a 100-hour interval, a 1,000-hour interval, etc. And not only do you want to be aware of it, but you also want to be prepared for it. Let's say, for example, with the MBX Bucker, I think the pillow block bearings, off the top of my head, I think require a couple of pumps of grease at about 60 hours. Well, if you get to 60 hours and you don't own that grease, you can't do the preventive maintenance. So whether it's belts or lubricants or spare parts or whatever it is, make sure that you have the items in stock on the shelf at hand so that you can perform your regular maintenance as prescribed. Good idea to track the hours of use on your equipment. If you've got serialized parts like the Mobius equipment, most of the components are now serialized. Good idea to track the hours of use on that, on each individual part. They might be interchangeable parts. So, serial number X of tumbler might be going into trimmer Y on one day and trimmer Z on the second day. So it's a good idea to track the individual parts so that you know when their expected life might be coming to an end. And again, make sure that you have replacement parts on hand in a timely fashion. And always take a preventative instead of a reactive approach. So every piece of machinery out there, I don't care if you're manufacturing plywood in a mill, or if you're stamping out fenders for a Ford, or whatever it is, the machinery involved requires preventative maintenance, whether it's lubrication, perhaps changing out bearings, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't schedule the time into your week, month, year, what have you, for that preventative maintenance, you're going to be scrambling when something breaks. So make sure, like, if you need to be trimming 8 hours a day, make sure that there's an employee there in hour 9 on maintenance day, so that you can actually, attend that piece of equipment and maintain it in its prescribed schedule. And that's really, really kind of huge. The ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure is crucial in any industry, but particularly in a time constrained industry like this, where you've got product that you're harvesting and it needs to be processed. You're going to thank yourself that you went ahead and lubricated and changed out whatever needed doing before you're in the middle of a harvest and go, oh my God, yeah, I really should have greased that bearing. That's sort of the generals on PM there, Jonathan. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, one question was what's the most frequent item that breaks even with preventative maintenance?
What piece of equipment?
Yeah.
Right. I think he didn't specify, he or she didn't specify. I'm imagining they're talking about a trimmer or maybe even the M108S.
We don't kind of see it typical. It's generally situational, and it could be.
I know the number one thing I would recommend.
Let's hear it.
It's around filters. So in the US, most places are dry trimming. And when you are dry trimming, you are creating keef dust. And keef dust, it's not your regular atmospheric dust or belly button lint. It is sticky. So it is going to clog your filters more quickly, and it's going to get on everything. So this is where, when you talk about, don't run out of filters and then that day panic.
Right.
Make sure that you've got some on hand and you're having them in advance. That's the number one thing.
And then the other sort of general in machinery in general, bearings have a service life. So don't expect a bearing to run for the rest of your life, because it won't.
And that goes for any trimmer that might be used out there.
Well, it goes for anything. It goes for the wheel bearings in your utility trailer. It goes for the roller tables on the plywood factory. Anything.
Okay, cool. And I hope I'm not jumping the gun on this one, but Jeffrin was asking for helical blades, is it okay to soak it prior to cleaning or just pre-rinse?
Yeah, you don't want to soak the helical blade bearing blocks, because they do have bearings in them. So for the helical blade, our recommendation is put them on the helical blade rack. You can spritz down the actual black blade part itself and leave those with the moisture, whatever your cleaning solution is, on there, and then come back and wipe them down and rinse them off. But you don't want to immerse the two bearing blocks. It's okay if they get wet, but I wouldn't direct your pressure washer at them, and you don't want to immerse them.
And then just while we're specifically on the topic of the helical blade, it is black nitrided, which is a surface treatment. So you want to be sure of your pH levels. That's a low pH cleaner you want on there. A high pH, not a high pH cleaner. A high pH cleaner will strip the surface.
Okay, cool. And we're getting a number of questions that are specific to the Mobius itself. Does it make sense to answer those now, or should we hang tight?
Well, we're going to go to Mobius directly following this. So, I mean, it might be the transition time now, depending on what other questions are in the queue.
Well, we've got questions about hours on the tumbler, max moisture content for running flower through Mobius, any parts of the Mobius that ISO 30% shouldn't be used on, those kind of things. You want me to tackle those now?
We can, yeah, and those are pretty easy to tackle. So working backwards, there are no parts of the trimmer or other equipment that you shouldn't use ISO on. They're all safe now. I guess if you have an older version of the in-feed hopper and out-feed chute, that's the black ABS plastic. ABS and ISO don't get along with one another, but other than that, it's fine. But just keep in mind that ISO dehydrates things. So if you're putting it on rubber O-rings and things and plastics repeatedly, day after day after day, it will cause it to dehydrate and reduce its service life.
Okay, cool.
Let me just jump in here real quick. It sounds like we're transitioning into Mobius specific questions now. So let's take a quick moment to say thank you very much to everybody who's joined us. We'd love for 100% of you to stick around and check out the Mobius specific section. In the event that that's not how your day is playing out, thanks a million for setting aside the time and coming and joining us today and for your contributions. Again, a reminder, a link will be sent out to everybody who is registered and watching this webinar right now, including all of the links and information that we've presented for you today. So again, thanks a million. And then I also want to just reiterate that we're always on the search for good information, tips, tricks from the field. That's how we've learned what we know so far, and we're endless pursuit of knowledge. So please write us in, email us, info@eteros.com will work, or any of our personal emails, and give us those tips and tricks, maybe tools that you're using, maybe methodology, maybe cleaners, etc. But by all means, pass on your knowledge. We'd be happy to disseminate it broadly. And thanks very much for joining, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Now let's continue with Mobius specific.
Okay.
Sure. So this is actually not Mobius specific, but I think is a good one. And that was about room temperature of operation. Can the room temperature make maintenance easier or allow the machine to run longer?
So it's the machines themselves have very wide operating ranges that are not going to be impacted by temperature. But the generation of cannabis resin is hugely impacted by temperature. So, the example that generally people would want to use is the trimmer. So I don't care what trimmer you're using, you will get resin buildup on the blades, for example, and on the tumbler. You are going to get resin buildup on the blades and the tumbler much faster at higher temperatures than lower temperatures. So in the Mobius world, we call it a hot swap. So you would have the ability to run longer between hot swaps if your room temperature is lower.
Okay, cool. And if using ISO on an older machine, is ISO okay on the tumbler if it's then stored and soaked in distilled water until next use?
Yeah, no need to soak it. So you can use ISO on any of the tumblers that are out there in the universe now. That's totally fine. I wouldn't clean it with ISO, not because the material is going to break down, but there are adhesives there. It's just going to dry it out. It's not effective. If you are not going to be using your tumbler for a while, we recommend putting it in a plastic bag with just a bit of water. A couple of tablespoons of water is enough to rehydrate the plastic that's in there. If you've washed your tumbler and you've rinsed it off and you're going to use it the next morning, don't worry about it. Just leave it out. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so the components of the tumbler, I'll just touch on real quick here. They are, you can use a higher pH degreaser. So our recommended one on that is Super Clean. Just while we're in the minute, on the topic of saying don't use ISO to clean it because it's not effective, Super Clean is, and it can handle that high pH.
Yeah. It's just, ISO is just so expensive.
And sort of related, but what would you say is the max moisture content percentage for running wet flower through a Mobius? That was from Christina again.
Yeah. Didn't Nymera ran it, it was raining outside.
It was raining. They were chopping it and bringing it, bucking it and running it. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, there's really not an upper limit. We had a very, very interesting call from somebody who was saying they're in a dusty environment outdoors and they wanted to literally wash off their material before running it through the trimmer, which I'd never heard of before. And my answer to him was, product aside, in terms of the machine itself, as long as it isn't wringing, dripping wet, you should be fine. Like a few raindrops at
no problem.
Nymera was no big issue whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So fresh from the field, even if it's got rain on it.
And from Alice, how many hours can you expect to get from a tumbler when cleaned properly and maintained properly?
So expected service life on a tumbler is 200. We've got, I couldn't even tell you, I can begin to calculate how many we have in the field with far more hours on it than that. But that's the expectation.
And a huge part of that is that, it kind of depends on how people are handling their tumblers and making sure that they're keeping them in good condition. We talked way at the beginning of this hour about how wash bays are really limited on space. So the number one thing that I notice is that because people don't have a proper amount of space to store their tumblers once they've been washed, they just kind of hang them up on things and they squish them all together and they're not storing them properly. So they end up getting kinks in the wires of their tumblers. And that's essentially what's going to shorten the service life. It's not really about cleaning or wearing it out. It's about just improper storage and handling that shortens service life.
And also remember the 6-point inspection. Those are some lessons we learned and developed as the normal recommended procedure. But every time you lift that lid open, there's a chance that the act of lifting the lid could pull the bed knives up a little bit and drop them back down just because of the sticky nature of everything involved. So every time you close the lid again, perform that 6-point inspection, make sure your bed knives are seated in properly, give the tumbler a spin by hand, make sure it's clearing everything before you start running again, because that's where we see a ton of failures.
And how do you clean the vacuum, I think maybe the separator between batches, and how do you avoid cross-contamination there?
I mean, hit it with a pressure washer. You can,
yeah.
The separator is very forgiving. That we have, you may or may not know, the old version is an aluminum version. Our new version, newer version has been out for a long time now, is the stainless steel version. The stainless one dismantles into 3 individual pieces, the main body, the whistle, some people call it, or some people call it the snail shell, and then the fascia and the window. So it can completely disassemble. You can hit it with a pressure washer. If you don't have a pressure washer, hit it with your degreaser, allow it to penetrate, scrub clean, rinse clean. You're good to go. And then just make sure that when you reassemble it, that everything fits back together precisely and the way it's supposed to. The separator is a key component of the vacuum system, and the vacuum system is crucial to any trimmer out there. So make sure that you're in your reassembly, everything's right and tight. If you're not sure what that looks like, get a hold of us. We'll make sure that you're getting in the right direction, but there you go.
Perfect. And we'll just do one last question, and this is from Mike. He was asking about a product called Shield. It has an accelerated hydrogen peroxide. Would that be compatible with tumbler and the blades?
Yeah, we actually reference Shield on our website, so there's a link to it there. So it was developed as a combination cleaning and sanitizing product. It is safe to use on all the Mobius components. I've listed it there as a sanitizer. I've found that lifting really, really tough resin soils, it wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be, but I am still a fan of it because it can act as a sanitizer for you, and it is safe to use on everything. And I think on lighter soiled material, if you get at it right away, or if you're dry trimming, it can be really effective. Key with Shield is right now, I believe it's still only available in Canada. So once they get their distribution network to the US worked out, we'll be able to direct you to that as well.
Okay, cool. Well, there are more questions. Do you guys want to tackle one or two more, or what would you like? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So there are two questions, one from Emily and one from the Whistler Trim crew. And they were asking about storing the bag or storing the tumbler in a bag with water. Is that the best way to store it when it's not in use for like an extended period of time?
So I would say on this one, just if you know that you're going to be putting it into use on Wednesday, put it into a bag on Tuesday and leave it overnight. That's really all the amount of time that it needs. Other than that, it can be left out. Just make sure that it's left for that extended period of time clean. And if it's going to be coiled up, it's coiled up nicely, not in some tangled mess, or it's left open. And then just give yourself 24 hours in advance to put it in a bag with some water, and that's enough time for the plastic to take on some of the hydration.
Yeah, it's about relative humidity. So the idea with putting into a bag with water isn't to saturate it, it's to put it into a humid environment, and just it'll passively hydrate through the humid environment.
And another comment from Peter, have you guys considered using a separate dust collector option instead of the filter bags that are typically on the M108S?
We have that as an option. Give us a call, Peter. So we have an adapter for the exhaust housing, so that you can actually use an external filtration system that you would connect it to.
And Jacqueline had a good question for somebody that's interested in Mobius equipment. If something breaks or needs servicing, do we have support representatives? Do we have service or tech support, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. You're going to hit one of us on the phone typically if you've got an issue. So
if you had a tech support issue over the last hour and 11 minutes, you wouldn't have received tech support.
I did feel my phone vibrate in my pocket a handful of times. So if it's any of you guys, sorry, I'm busy. But yeah, we're here to help you all the time.
And I'm sure you will be getting back to those calls here as soon as we're done, right, Brett?
100%.
I hope there's not very many.
I think I got about 3.
So one more, and we'll call this our last question. So this was from Costa, and he was asking about the bucker, actually. Is there a way to disengage the rollers, allowing them to spin freely by hand to clean them? Can you guys speak to that, to clean the bucker?
Well, wait till you see the video on it. This is a trick I learned from our CEO here, Aaron, who I think he's featured. I think he's in the video.
Yeah.
So you get to see Aaron in action. But actually, I was thinking the same thing, Costa. And what Aaron does is he takes off the dye plate, sprays it down with the low pressure garden sprayer with Super Clean, puts the dye plate back on for safety, and turns it on, lets it run for 10 minutes. And the rollers rubbing on each other do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think we're pretty much good. Do you guys have anything else you want to share, or anything you want to close with?
Any further wisdom to impart?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing right from the top, and it's going to feel like we're hitting you over the head with a hammer, but it bears repeating. ISO isn't a cleaner. You have 2 characteristics: physically clean looking, then sanitized. So just make sure do yourself a favor, do your company a favor, use a cleaner to clean before you move on to sanitizing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. I am going to just reference a couple closing notes here. So there were a lot of specific questions around cleaning tumblers. Just want to remind everybody, easiest, quickest way to do it, bar none, is with our automated tumbler washer. You can take a look at that on the website. We're doing more and more of these webinars and posting more and more content on our blog about this. But if there's any topic you're interested in learning more about, send an email to info@mobiustrimmer.com, or you can give us a call, whatever you like, however you like to communicate. And if we get enough requests, we'll set that up for our next one. The recording of this will be sent as soon as possible, so probably tomorrow, but maybe this evening. In addition to that, we're going to actually include the slide deck that we use in the webinar, especially because there's some kind of relevant details in there with the regulations and so on. So we'll send that as well, and we'll send a few extra links. And I just want to make sure to remind everybody, there are a lot of resources available at the Mobius Academy and on our Mobius blog. Tons of guides. It's updated regularly, and both are available on our website at www.mobiustrimmer.com. So with that, I think we are pretty much done. I just want to thank everybody and have a great afternoon.